Hi everyone, my name is Nikhil Bhandari. Today's topic is quality engineering journey from shift left to shift right and beyond. We've been hearing these terms about shift left and shift right for a while now. But what happens beyond that? All the feedback loop that you get from observing your customers, observing your infrastructure, observing how the product is being used, how that is brought back to your development processes and your testing processes and deployment processes, and how do you make it efficient, more robust, and more reliable from there, right? How do you improve your processes based on the feedback that you receive? So let's deep dive into it. So what are we trying to do here? Um, uh, what's our aim? We want a single line of code can go to production. We want to make sure that all the quality criteria that we have defined are met in a mostly in an automated way. And my deployed feature is being whatever is being used by customers is working as expected and giving them a better customer experience. Why we need to do that is a better go to market strategy, right? If you don't do it, someone else will come and do it, right? So you want to release the feature as soon as possible, but with a good customer experience, without having without having any downtime, right? You do not want your application to be not available to customer when they want it. In today's world, your application should be up and running 24/7. You don't know who is using, where it's getting used from, where is your customer located, right? Um, and your application should work in multiple regions, on multiple devices with multiple third-party integrations, right? And how do we achieve that? One of the key aspect to ensuring quality with so many different factors and configuration is doing the automation. And you fail early, you fail fast, you learn from it and go back to your system and improve that process, right? Have that feedback loop. I'm sure everyone will be at some part of their agile journey, right? At different stages of agile journey, right? Imagine, you've been part of the agile development, and then you have a continuous integration, continuous testing, continuous delivery. Something has to be rolled back. It goes back to the continuous delivery. You need to roll back the feature again. Testing needs to be done. Going back to your development cycle again, rework and follow the same process. The rollbacks are very expensive. Identifying any production issues are very expensive always, right? It gives you a bad impression of your product. Plus, also it takes time for the new features that you're working on. It stops that, and you have to start working on fixing them, right? So how do you ensure that you have the right quality in place, at every stage of the cycle, so that you quickly identify, fix it, and move forward, right? Like the symbol indicates, right? It's an infinite loop, right? You plan, you code, you build, you test, you release, you deploy, you monitor, and observe, and go back to your planning stage again, right? Understand what are your customer needs, how customer is using your product, work with your product and the business teams, make the required tweaks, and then get back to the stages again, right? So there's a shift left part of it, and then there's a shift right part of it, right? And we'll deep dive into those, right? The continuous quality, right? The quality is important at every stage of the cycle, right? Right from the coding, the integration, the testing, the infrastructure, and the deployment, and the monitoring part of it, right? You measure those data, and then make your decision based on the data that you have received, and take this required action. Continuous life cycle, new code with every build, every deployment in production, right? That's a goal every company, everyone wants to look at, right? And I'm sure everyone is making a lot of good progress to reach to that journey, right? So, quality is measured at every stage of this continuous life cycle, right? So look at some of the shift left pipeline, right? A user story, you have a robust code review process, your unit test code coverage. You look at your code aspect in terms of looking at from a static code analysis perspective. You bring in the security in place, doing the security scan, ensuring that your product is ready for the global market. Make sure that the libraries that you're using do not have any vulnerabilities, right? Your infra validations, right? All your monitoring in place, right? And you observe your performance, your metrics about your performance, your the response times, the throughputs, and everything, right? Early in the cycle, and then you toggle flags, right, to ensure that your application works with flag on and flag off, right? And then you also have a rollback mechanism in an automated way, so that once something does not go the way you wanted to go in production, how quickly you can roll back so that you can restore back the original state. Right. Shift right part of it, right? So uh, you know one of the key aspect is the heartbeat testing, right? What does it mean? Your infrastructure is there's a heartbeat in your infrastructure. Your servers you're up and running, right? And then the health check. Your application is behaving. Your application is up and running, right? So there are some periodic signals that you get it from your heartbeat testing and the health check testing, right? Logging and alerting. Logging gives you a lot of information about how your product being used, what are typical workflows, what are typical transactions, right? The timestamps, right? Any error messages, right? And you trigger certain events, you trigger certain alerts based on certain regular expression, based on certain aspect of your application, how it's behaving, which gives you a lot of insights about how your product being used. Monitoring, of course, how data is flowing from one system to another, one service to another, right? And how the interpreting of that information to track the progress of it reaches to the end state, right, is very important. Synthetic monitoring, you identify the issues before your customer finds it, right? So you run your test in production the way customer uses your product, right? Create certain dummy users, ensure that those are not tracked as part of your analytics, ensure that those are not fully automated in terms of the cleanups. You don't want to run any cleanup scripts in your production on a daily basis, right? So synthetic monitoring gives you an advantage of identifying an issue before your customer finds it, right? You define the functionality, you define certain benchmarking that if I get certain login errors after 10 retries, then probably just send out an alert to the team. Disaster recovery, right? How if certain service is down, what do you do? How do you simulate those scenarios in the lower environment? It's very difficult, but some certain things that you have to do in the production, right? Once your application is deployed, how do you do a cutover? One of the service goes down and you go to the DR region and make sure that there is a latency and the application performance is measured because the service is going to be run from a different region and there are a lot of network calls which will go in and out of your if your infrastructure, right, to the other region, right? How do you simulate that, right? Feature toggles and flags, you have a mechanism to modify your features, your flags, right, without doing any deployments. How do you restore it back if something goes wrong? How do you ensure that and find it out where those flags are? Those are taken at the runtime. Those are some of the DB flags, right? But it should not require any code change. Probably a restart should be good enough for you to use those particular features, right? And the fault tolerance, right? Whenever something goes one of the services goes down, how your system behaves, you need to simulate, right? If one of the services goes down and if your app, mobile app is using, it should not crash, right? So it should fail systematically and provide you the required information so that you can start troubleshooting. This is how full stack quality looks like. On the left side, you see a development cycle. How do you ensure quality at those stages? A zoom in picture at what happens during the testing phase, and then what happens on the right hand side in the production. We talked about many of them, right? In terms of logs, monitoring. Look at your FCIs, the failed customer interactions, right? How many 5xx errors that you get in production? Are those alarming? Set those alerts, right? You do synthetic monitoring, you talked about it. You identify which are the mostly used features, which are the mostly used workflows, right? What is my response time that I'm getting in production, right? and bring them back into your cycle, right? If I cover most of my 80% of the workflows, if I cover mostly the 20% of my workflows, I'm going to get a coverage of 80% of my application. So use your strategy around that so that you get a maximum coverage during your automation, during your quality checks. One of the key things that I observe over a period or years is about not having the right test data which is being used in production. Most of the bugs, the incident which happens is we don't have the right structure of data. We don't have the right information about the data which is being used in the production, right? So you should do, get your production data. Of course, take your approval from your security infosec teams, classify the data which is PII. You need to mask them, right? And then get that certain data in your non-production environment. You cannot get the entire data, but you need to classify, you need to segment, and probably find a mechanism. How do you regenerate the data based on the data that you've received from the production, so that you can generate data on your own, right? Create certain data pipelines for you. Yeah. Some of the key aspect to launch a particular feature is not to launch to everyone, right? Sometimes you just launch it, in terms of dark launching, you launch it without letting the customer know and see how they are interacting with the system. Sometimes you do roll out to a certain set of customers and a subgroup and see how it behaves. And certain times you have two different variations, right? And you observe how those variations are used by your customers. The different abilities, whatever the product that you are developing, whatever the feature that you're developing should be testable enough, right? In whatever way it is, either in the lower environment or in the production, but there has to be a testability aspect to it, right? Accessibility is important in certain countries and mandatory, right? Your product should be accessible by all set of customers. Interoperable, right? A key aspect in today's world, right? You are working on a web and then on the go, your session should continue on your mobile, right? So how do you ensure that your product is interoperable? The sessions are still alive, right? Or without any restrictions, you should be able to move between different products or different different devices, I would say. Your product is reliable, right? I mean, you can always trust that it's always available to you. It's always reliable, right? Observability, right? One of the important aspect in today's world is about identifying the issue without getting into the details of the system, right? So that you identify the root cause, you fix it quickly, right? So that's observability. And scalability, of course, whenever there is a need, your network, your software, your application, it should be horizontal scale, right? So you should not have any disruption in terms of your peak seasons. How do you get your feedback loop into your development cycle, right? Your voice of customer by your support teams, by looking at operations team, right? How do you ensure that voice of customer get back into your development cycle? Your production incident gives you a lot of you can learn a lot from production incident, right? How to avoid them in future. The alerts which keeps coming, right? It will give a lot of insights about what kind of alerts are getting generated. Are those alert enough to give you the information to improve your product experience, right? Of course, social media feedback, what people are talking about your product, and reviews and analytics, right? From your marketplaces and statistics and your crash reports, your business analytics reports, and all of them, right? How do you, on a regular basis, read them, put them in an actionable content, and then put that as part of your stories and keep delivering on them, right? Some of them could be some enhancement, some of them could be some of the new product features, some of them could be some of the existing issues that customers are facing, but probably not observed at a very high scale. Metrics, very important role. I mean, it needs to be actionable, right? You need to have the right data and something that you can take an action, right? At an engineering level, at a testing level, at a release level, application level, infrastructure, production, and business metrics, and customer satisfaction, right? Which gives you a key insights of how many customers are going to promote your product to the other customers, right? So that's pretty much it from my end. Thank you so much for listening to me. You can reach out to me on the social media handles. Thank you so much.